Yeah. Bills Mafia. Don Brown. Yeah. It's the Mafia, you know I'm rocking with the Bills. It's the Mafia, you know I'm rocking with the Bills. It's the Mafia, I'm with the Buffalo Bills. It's the Mafia, you know I'm rocking with the Bills. Hey, who you reppin'? What's your team? Who you reppin'? What's your team? You know I'm reppin' for my team. I got that Allen on my team. Micah High, Jordan Poyer, can you catch it? Can you? Trade day is like
Hello, Bills Mafia, and welcome in to the Bills Brawl. This is the Process Show, your regular Thursday show. My name is Charlie Gross, and I am here with my co-host, E.J. Daniels. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing awesome. Love to take the opportunity to talk and have a conversation with the Bills Mafia.
That's right. Bills Mafia in the house. And we've got a few things that have happened today and this week that affect the Buffalo Bills and the Bills Mafia. Well, let's start off with the one that probably been the most, without a doubt, the most talked about one. And that is J.J. Watt signed with the Arizona Cardinals. I don't know what to think about this. Because at first glance, I was thinking to myself, the Cardinals? You know, players can do whatever they want, right? Obviously, they're human beings, like, whatever they want. But I'm not sure that they necessarily fit the qualification of a Super Bowl contender, like he had said. So what are your thoughts, EJ, on this Watt to Arizona signing?
So here's the thing. I like the move for Watt because – so I have a couple different feelings because there are a couple different reports that came out. So then the one report that came out was from a former coach of the Texans, and they said J.J. Watt basically is a selfish player, right? So yeah, I was like, okay, well, all right. And they say that he does a lot of stuff that, you know, prohibits the defense, and he wouldn't sign him if it was him. I said, okay, I can get with that. Like, I can see that happening, right? So then I heard something from someone else, an unnamed source that I won't say. They were saying to me that J.J. Watt is a very disingenuous person. And I was like, what do you mean? They said, you know, they were going back to when the Houston had their hurricane efforts. J.J. Watt had only given like $365,000 out of his pocket or something like that. But Colin Kaepernick had gave $1 million out of his pocket. And J.J. Watt kind of took credit for giving that whole sum or raising that whole sum of money without giving Colin Kaepernick or anyone else their just due. So they were saying, trying to make the case that, oh, they're disingenuous. So you're saying, how does that refer back to Arizona? So J.J. Watt told us that he wanted to go to a contender. He made the assertions that he wanted to play for a Super Bowl, but that is not what he did. So my whole thought process is, and then on top of that, two other teams offered him more money than the Cardinals did. So my thing is that I'm thinking that JJ still wants to dominate and he wants to be the guy on that defense. Because honestly, if you think about the Cardinals defense, do you know, is there another notable name? They're going to cut Patrick Peterson. So is there another notable name? Chandler Jones doesn't get the, you know, respect that he deserves. So is there really
I was going to say Chandler
name?
Jones. I mean, he's honestly, Chandler Jones is probably the top 3 pass rusher in the league in the last 5, 6, 7 years.
Right, but the thing is, though, is like if you were to name me the top 3 pass rushers in the past 3 years, Chandler Jones' names wouldn't come up. It'd be like Khalil Mack, J.J. Watt, and like guys like that. You know what I mean?
Myles Garrett.
Yeah, or Von Miller, like those guys. Those are the names that would come up. No one would think to say, oh, Chandler Jones. So to bring it back to the thesis, I just think J.J. Watt went there because first and foremost, he wants to star there, and he wants to still be, you know, that guy. I mean, he still has the numbers. I mean, he's grading. He hasn't had a season in the last 3 years, you know, under 80, an 80 PFF grade. I'm like, he still can get it done. Yeah. You know, and also I was having another conversation with someone. I was telling them, I'm like, listen, think about where J.J. Watt has played his whole career. He was in Houston his whole career, hot weather, right? He was not only in a hot weather state, he was in a dome his whole career. And then he's playing in the AFC South, going to play teams twice a year that, you know, it doesn't snow very often, right? So going to Arizona, you get both of those. You get a dome and you get nice weather. And believe it or not, stuff like that matters to these players, man. They care about, you know, going to somewhere like Miami over somewhere like Buffalo. And I'm not saying Buffalo's a bad city. I'm not saying Buffalo isn't a free agent destination. All I'm saying is that these players choose little minute details like weather as a deciding factor as to where they want to play or spend the latter parts of their careers.
And there was something interesting to me because my thought was, okay, you lied, basically. And I'm not trying to be a bitter Bills fan because I'm not like, man, I'm not.
Did he lie or did he just change his mind mid free agency? That's how I look at it.
Right. And to me, the situation is so weird because I think in reference to what you were saying, I had seen a report on Twitter that the Colts had offered more money, but then I saw a tweet from the guys who do the Colts brawl, and they said that they actually talked to two people in the Colts organization, and they said that all the Colts did was call and try to gauge the money. They never even offered anything. So this situation is kind of weird just to begin with because there's a lot of like disinformation. And I had thought about JJ. I just did a little quick math here. He's missed 32 games. Mm-hmm. Okay. If you take away 2019, when he only played 8 games, he had 4 sacks. If you take away 2017, when he played 5 games with no sacks, and if you take away 2016, where he played 3 games with 1.5 sacks, that brings his total from 101 down to 95. If you then divide that by the amount of seasons left, he was averaging 14 sacks a year. Jeez. And I said 2 or 3 years ago, to me, if he stays healthy, he's a serious threat to the sack record. No doubt about it in my mind. So I wonder, going to play possibly with Hassan Reddick, but certainly with Chandler Jones, in the warm climate, in a stadium where you're going to be playing people who are warm weather in a dome, that division, is this a late career run at the sack record? I mean, is that in his mind? Now let's be clear. He needs 100 sacks. So if he can get back to averaging 14 a season, I mean, he'd have to play another 7 or 8 years and average 14 sacks. I'm not saying it's easy, but I wonder if that was in his mind. Like, hey,
I would be on that train with you, and I would agree that probably is on his mind. But what is stopping me from actually thinking he can achieve this feat is the fact that, like you just said, he's been hurt a lot, and right. he is only getting older, and he is removed off having back surgery. For a 30-year-old to have back surgery, that's not something that's just minor. That is serious. That's like 60-year-old, 70-year-old problems, like having surgery on your back and stuff like that. But I mean, he is a NFL lineman, so I understand. But I'm saying he's had serious surgeries. And so I don't think that his body is going to hold up long enough for him to do that. I mean, on the flip side of that coin, I mean, if he's healthy, he commands a double team every play. Like sure. he is just that dominant. I mean, Bills Mafia, go back to the playoff game 2 years ago against the Texans, where J.J. Watt single-handedly wrecked that game for the Bills in the second half. He got a momentum going into halftime, and then J.J. Watt just kept killing the Bills' O-line, and subsequently, you know what happened. So J.J. Watt is a difference maker. And one more point I want to add is everyone keeps saying that Arizona wasn't a contending team. Now, they were not contending for a Super Bowl, and they did not make the playoffs. But remember, at one point in time, they were leading the NFC West, and the NFC West by far is the toughest division in football. Probably in sports, with how many good teams they have in that division.
It's a weird division, though, isn't it?
It is a very weird division. You got pretty much 3 great coaches. We're gonna say 4 great coaches. Cliff Kingsbury isn't a great coach yet. No. They got 3 great coaches. But my point is Arizona at one point in time was good. I mean, they fell off at the end of the season, and that is on Cliff Kingsbury, as we talked about off air. I feel like his play calling down the stretch, definitely prohibited them. And I also feel like they need more weapons on that offense. That offense is as high-powered as they think it is. It was a lot of Kyler Murray just improvising and making plays, and they got to get more playmakers. I know they got Hop, and Bills Mafia knows about him. We're not even going to bring him up.
27 targets.
Right, but we knew They have to get more than DeAndre Hopkins. Christian Kirk is cool. He's a nice deep threat. Andy Isabella is cool. Hamilton's cool. Like these guys are cool, but they're not high level options. They need more talent on
they
that.
They could use
on
some
that
more
offense.
offensive linemen too. So going back to Watt for a minute, his career is astounding. I mean, if you just read just going by games started, 16, 16, 16, 16, 16, 3, 5, 16, 8, 16. And I think the thing that's interesting about him and that people forget is he's always had at least one pretty good, and sometimes two or three pretty good rushers playing with him. I mean, however you feel about, Brian Cushing, and there was Whitney Merciless and Clowney. I mean, he's never been on his own. And sure, he's been injured, but I wonder sort of the decline and disappearance of those players as well had to affect him.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, so it'd be interesting for me to see how he is with a bona fide rusher on the other side.
Yeah, and the caveat is, or the question is, is he fully healthy? That's really the only question I have for Watt. I mean, is he healthy? If you can get a healthy J.J. Watt, that is a difference maker for that defense. I mean, the defense kind of even took strides last year. I don't know how often you watch Arizona games, but, remember, Hassan Reddick came on. Chandler Jones was hurt, obviously. And then they had their first-round pick, Isaiah Simmons, come on. And that's the scary part because, if anyone remembers anything about Isaiah Simmons coming out of Clemson, he's a linebacker, safety.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever you need, he is that Swiss Army knife. So, I mean, he's have played.
Vance Joseph, right? That's the coordinator.
Yes, sir. It is.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, he did a phenomenal job. And the reason I can tell, aside from just numbers, is you get a guy like Reddick and you're using him the right way. You're using him in a way where he can succeed. That's how I know you're a good coach. It's not just about the numbers.
And that's the whole thing in pro. I remember one guy I used to know who played at the University of Connecticut. He was a wide receiver, and he just was schooling me about football in general. And he was just like, listen, football is all about, what position you're put in, what you're asked to do, and how well you do that based on what you're asked to do. And that is the mark of a great coach. If you can identify a player's talents and, like you said, put him in a position where he can thrive, that makes a great coach. Remember Vance Joseph, he pretty much failed as a head coach.
Yes.
When he was out in Denver, pretty much.
Yeah, definitely.
And so it's nice to see him bounce back as a defensive coordinator and do what he was like really good at. I mean, even, when he was in Miami, if I'm not mistaken, that's where he came from before he went to Denver.
I think so.
Yeah. Miami, right? Yeah. I mean, they had a solid defense too. So, I mean, he's a great defensive coach. And then they got Budda Baker too, that they gave that big fat contract to last offseason. So they have pieces, and adding J.J. Watt is just only going to make them better.
So the question now is, where do the Bills go from here? I think it's fair to say that from what we've heard, we know they were in on Watt. How in were they? That's up for debate. But they were in on Watt. So where do they go from here? Do they draft a guy? Is there another free agent? Or, I mean, are they going to roll with a line that is some combination of Addison, Hughes, Epinesa, and then Starr and Ed Oliver? And are they going to roll with Dane Jackson, or at least give him a shot at cornerback too? And are they – I guess what I'm asking is, let's do this hypothetical. I know this is hypothetical, but, hey, that's what we do. Let's say Dane Jackson wins the cornerback 2 job. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let me preface this by saying, let's say they draft an offensive lineman, a linebacker, because we assume Milano's gone, and like a big nickel guy in the draft. In addition to that, Dane Jackson becomes cornerback 2, and they keep Addison, and the defensive line is, like I said, whether Addison or Epinesa, Hughes on the other side, and then, first down, it's Starr and Ed. What are our thoughts about that? I mean, are we satisfied with that? Do we think the Bills would be satisfied with that?
Honestly, if that was their plan, I'd be pissed if that was their plan. Addison is going to make $10 million I think it's post June 1st. If they cut him, they can get that money back. They need to cut him. He's 34. He's going to be 35. That is old. That's old,
especially for
linemen. That's old. And so Mario Addison's best years are behind him. He didn't suck this year. He had a solid year in the totality of things. But if they were to employ this draft plan, this offseason plan that you just mentioned, I probably would be. I wouldn't like it at all, honestly. I've been on this podcast many times, and I said the Bills need to go corner first. They need to go corner first in the draft because that is a position. The reason I said that, because I don't think I've given my ideology behind it. They can go corner first because, first of all, just reading PFF stuff and, reading their answers for things, they view corner as the second most valuable position on the field, right? So the Bills are pretty solid at cornerback across the board. I know they say they need to upgrade, but that's just me, prognosticating them going forward. But if they were able to get a guy like Asante Samuel Jr., they would keep a strength, intact, right? And then there is no pass rusher in the draft that, is going to come in and contribute right away. So they need to allocate resources to go get a pass rusher in free agency, a proven guy. That is what they need to do. I mean, I guess Star's a okay one tech, but I would like to see them. I would like to see them get younger on the defensive line. I mean, for all intents and purposes, everyone says that the Bills D line was so bad. They can only go up, right? So let's just draft young defensive linemen, and there are a lot of good ones that they can get late. So I'd rather us go that right. Infuse the defense with some youth. I'm cool with Dane Jackson being cornerback number 2 because I think he didn't get enough opportunities. So if they can grab Asante Samuel Jr., Greg Newsome, Iffy, from Syracuse, they can grab one of those three guys in the first 2 rounds. I'd be really happy with that, and then go guard or something like that. Then I'd be happy.
Sorry, I was just looking up Patrick Peterson real quick here, because he's might be available. They haven't cut him yet, I don't think, right? Is that what
he's a cut candidate. So I would say that because they drafted Byron Murphy 2 years ago, and I can't remember who's the other corner.
Right.
Was it Kirkpatrick? Was it Drake Kirkpatrick? I think was the other corner.
So, yeah.
It was Drake Kirkpatrick. So I mean, Peterson was playing in the slot. So I mean, that's pretty much telling me that you're about to be on your way out if you're playing in the slot at that age. So
he's going to be 31 in September. He's a free agent. Okay. Okay, he's a free agent. So he's coming off a contract that paid him an average of $14 million a year. He's going to be 31 in September. I mean, if the Bills sign him, what are our thoughts there? I guess. I haven't watched enough Arizona to really say.
If this was Patrick Peterson a couple years ago, obviously we'd be all over it.
Yeah, well,
thing is, you're right. But the thing is, though, this is Patrick Peterson about to be 31 and playing in the slot. And it's just like, again, as I said many times, I'm going to say it again. Does signing Patrick Peterson bring you closer to beating the Chiefs? Like, ask yourself that question.
Right.
And the answer to me, honestly, even though I do like him, is no. He doesn't bring me any closer to. Honestly, if they line Tyreek Hill up in the slot, it's a wrap. They line a healthy Sammy Watkins up in the slot, it's a wrap. They have the Chiefs prognosticated to draft Kadarius Toney from Florida. I don't know if you know anything about Kadarius Toney. That's another.
I know that guy. I want the Bills to draft him so that the Chiefs don't.
So my point is that if they add more speed, and then you got Mecole Hardman, who also runs a 4.3, he can't catch worth a damn. But that he can't compete with that speed at this point in his career. It's cool.
No.
I like him as a player, but again, we gotta get younger. The Bills can't keep going for these free agents that's past their prime unless it's Richard Sherman. That's the only one I'll get on board with.
I know enough about Toney to know that I don't want him on the Chiefs.
Exactly. When I saw that, I was like, man,
you gotta be kidding me.
They just retool they do the draft right, man. The only pick I don't like the Chiefs that they made was Allaire, but they get value. They don't try to just go after need. They get value players. Like that year they drafted Mecole Hardman. They didn't need Mecole Hardman. They drafted him because he was the best player available. And then this year they might get either Elijah Moore from Ole Miss or Kadarius Toney potentially. And just even those two players is just like, that's what you do. You get the best player available. And it's just like, man, more speed for the Bills to try to compete with, man. It's just
right.
It's crazy.
Well, let's move on. We talked a little bit about this last week with the Brandon Beane thing, and he was not lying. The Bills have submitted a rules change. This is per Albert Breer, which is per sources. The Bills have submitted a rules change proposal to the NFL that would bar interviews for front office and coaching positions until after the conference title games and hirings until after the Super Bowl. Owners could vote on it this offseason. I also saw a tweet that indicated that Sean Payton seems to be very much behind this proposal as well. And I think it's great. I mean, it makes sense to me. I mean, why not?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it makes perfect sense. I mean, like Brandon Beane was saying last week on his interview, it's just like, you know, a coach has to think about a game plan, and then not only think about a game plan, but, you know, prepare for an interview to possibly be a head coach of another team. Like, that's a lot of pressure on one person. And I agree, you know, have this stuff after, and it's only going to add to the frenzy of free agency, you know, the frenzy of the off season. You know, we have more resources than we ever have to learn about, you know, coaching, hiring and firings and front office movements and player movements, and Twitter and Instagram and Facebook gives us so much access to what these players are doing, what these coaches are doing, you know, that we don't see. So it's only going to add to the frenzy of that. And I know that Monday after the season, I'm glued to ESPN and Fox Sports, you know, seeing which coaches are going to get fired and which not. So I think it'll be a great move by the league. And finally, they do something that's going to actually benefit everybody.
Right. And I suppose you could still fire the coaches the day after the season. You just can't interview anyone. With that, the proposal would be you couldn't interview anybody until that, you know, right before the Super Bowl.
And then they'll give them a proper opportunity, because we've talked on this podcast before, give them an actual proper opportunity to go through all the candidates and make sure, you know, that they're doing their due diligence by the Rooney Rule, because we know how often teams skip over the Rooney Rule and just, you know, interview just like one random minority coach and then say, hey, that's what we're doing. Like, no, this will give them the opportunity to do the due diligence, look and see who's all the candidates that are available, and make sure that everyone who's going to interview for the job is qualified for the job.
Yeah, I agree. And coaching, hiring in the NFL is I don't think it's a complex problem. I think it's pretty obvious what the problem is, but that's not exactly what this podcast is about today. Yeah. Kyle Rudolph is a free agent, and we were talking before, and I was convinced that Kyle Rudolph was 60 or 70 years old. It turns out he's only 31. And I saw Greg Thompson tweet this out earlier that he would be interested in the Bills signing Rudolph and still developing Dawson Knox. Let me make clear that was in his tweet as well. And I didn't really know what my thoughts were about Rudolph. My thoughts about 28-year-old Kyle Rudolph, I really like that Kyle Rudolph, and I thought that he had actually sustained some injuries, but as I look on his Pro Football Reference page, that doesn't really seem to be the case, at least not recently. I love him because he's from Notre Dame, a big Notre Dame fan.
Oh, no.
So what do you think about the Bills signing Rudolph?
They should definitely go and sign Rudolph. I don't know if you saw Tyler Croft's tweet, but it looked like he going back into free agency too. So now,
and I think his wife tweeted something too, didn't she? About Mama
Croft be on it, boy. Don't mess with Mama Croft. She be on it, bro. That's one wife I ain't messing with. Mama Croft be on it, but he said he was going back into free agency. So, I mean, that would be a huge signing for the Bills. I mean, he's a Pro Bowl tight end. The only issue I've ever had with Kyle Rudolph is at one point in time when Gronk was in the league, he thought he was the best tight end in the league. And I was just like, bro, he was never at any point in time in his career the best tight end in the league. He was really good though. I will say that he's really good. 200 targets or catches, something like that PFF put out with 0 drops. I mean,
I think it's exactly 200.
Yeah, 200, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I know a certain tight end that can't catch open passes. So, I mean,
I don't know why you got to be so mean to Reggie Gilliam like that.
Nah, right. Yeah, Reggie Gilliam. Yeah, right. Reggie Gilliam actually catches the ball, though. I'm just saying.
I'm going to buy a Dawson Knox jersey next year.
All right. Well, that'd be your money wasted then, buying a Dawson Knox jersey.
Rudolph's got a 68.1 catch percentage, if people like that. For his career, which is about 10 years. 665 targets, 453 receptions, 48 touchdowns, 2-time Pro Bowler. If you know, that's a little bit of a popularity contest, but yeah, I mean, I think he's a solid. Certainly would benefit the Bills to have this type of player on the team, even if it's just for a year or two. I mean, that's probably what the contract would be, right? Like a 2-year contract.
Yeah, I would like to see a 2-year contract. The thing people got to remember about Kyle Rudolph, though, is that, remember, they kind of went to a scheme change. They went through a couple scheme changes, right? So they've been running this wide zone system for the past couple years in Arizona, and like they've been sticking to that. And Minnesota, excuse me. Minnesota's issue is that they have a lot of receiving talent. They just won't go to a spread offense. And honestly, it would benefit Kirk Cousins so greatly. But, you know, Kyle Rudolph was, you know, relegated to being a blocking tight end. And you guys remember, I think it was 2 years ago when they played the Saints in the playoffs and Kyle Rudolph caught that touchdown to end the Saints for the second time in like 4 years. So Kyle Rudolph is a great tight end. He's a reliable tight end. He can block, and the Bills would literally not have to change anything about their offense. He would come in and be a solid option right away. And with this year coming up and Diggs coming off of this monstrosity of a season that he just had, he is going to see double teams this year. There, you can almost book it. He's going to be double, and he will be top of the scouting report. So having another guy that can get open, who also played with Stephon Diggs,
yeah,
another guy who can get open, catch the ball, and be reliable. Right. Yeah, right. And be reliable. I think he's only going to benefit, you know, the Bills' offense.
Yeah, and I think it would be. I'd like to see this offense running some 2 tight end stuff. Yeah, I think that would be interesting. Obviously, the Bucs did that somewhat. I mean, the Eagles have done that in the past, and the Ravens do it quite a bit. I'd really like to see that. I think it just gives the Bills more options. And like you said, Diggs is obviously going to be, not that he wasn't this year, but they're going to like triple team the guy. So having another veteran weapon, an experienced weapon to help him out can't hurt. I think it would help Josh, you know, a little more confidence for those sort of short check down Tom Brady type things. The red zone target as well. I think anyone with that size is immediately labeled a good red zone guy. Yeah, I don't see a lot of negatives, right?
No, I don't see any negatives either. I mean, like you said, he hasn't really been hurt. He's just, when you're in a scheme that doesn't allow you to, you know, accentuate your talents, then obviously you're going to look average. And then also they drafted Irv Smith. Was that 2 drafts ago? You know, yeah, they drafted Irv Smith. So it's just like, it's time for Irv Smith to sign because Irv Smith's actually really good. So, I mean, he was expendable. He's getting older. Irv Smith's young, can run, can make plays. So, I mean, I understand the move, but it's going to be, if the Bills decide to sign him, it'd be to their benefit. You know, I would personally like to see them go sign Gerald Everett from the Rams. But, I mean, if they got Kyle Rudolph, they'll still be in good shape.
Yeah, I agree. So I don't know what to think about this in terms of the Bills. I was a little surprised that this happened. A little weird to me.
Mm-hmm.
The Dolphins are going to or will release Kyle Van Noy. And that was weird to me because my understanding is, and I'm not saying they're changing their defensive scheme, but obviously they're running sort of the Patriots defensive scheme where a guy like Kyle Van Noy, kind of the epitome of a player who excels in that system. And I'm weird that they're cutting him, and I think that maybe he'd fit with the Bills, but if I'm not mistaken, he's another guy who's around 30, probably going to be pretty expensive. I'm not sure if that's, the best option to replace Milano per se with Kyle Van Noy. What are your thoughts about
Kyle Van Noy? Is not going to replace Matt Milano. I like Kyle Van Noy. Nice pass rusher off the edge. If I'm not mistaken, he is a stand-up 3-4 type linebacker. That's what the Dolphins played last year. So I was quite surprised that they cut him, but he must have did something. He must have sucked or something. He must have did. But I remember from watching the Dolphins games because they played the Rams when they played the Rams. Andrew Van Ginkel, I don't know if you guys know who that is, but he actually played really well. So I think that is why they let him go, because they got such good play from him. He had to be a late round pick from Wisconsin. I remember watching him on tape, and he had a pretty solid year for them because every time he came on the field, I remember him making plays. And when they played the Rams, I remember he had like a couple forced fumbles, and I think he scored once too. So, and then in the Chiefs game, I think he got a sack in that game too. So I think that is probably the biggest reason why they let him go, because they getting younger, cheaper talent. And that's what you got to find nowadays, especially with every team pretty much being cap strapped. You got to find young, cheap talent. And why am I paying you? What was his contract? I think it was
his contract was pretty crazy, and I'm really surprised that they got out from under it. I know that he had $30 million guaranteed.
Yeah,
but the way they structured it, they left themselves a window, like right now, where they could get out of it without having to. It was a lot of stuff where once the middle of March hits, like his future salaries become guaranteed. Okay. So that's kind of what they did. So that's why they.
I mean, hey, it's a shrewd move on their behalf. Like Brian Flores is really, making moves, and I'm very interested to see what they do in this draft, especially with this move coming. It sounds to me like more moves are coming from the Dolphins, but the Dolphins. I've been saying since last year, man, don't count them out. Don't sleep on the Dolphins. I know the Bills beat them twice, and Josh has had his best games against the Dolphins, but I mean they're going to be a tough team for a while. If they can get their quarterback situation straight, if they're going to go with Tua or they're going to re-sign Fitzpatrick or even bring in another guy like a Jameis or someone like that, like a journeyman guy. I mean, if they can get that position solidified, they're going to have a solid, tough team that the Bills going to have to deal with.
Yeah, Van Ginkel, one fumble recovery for 78 yards and a touchdown.
Touchdown, yeah, I remember that.
5.5 sacks, 14 QB hits. I know that sacks aren't everything. Yeah, Wisconsin, 5th round.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, that'll be interesting. Yeah, the Dolphins are the quintessential – for me, I'm not really – I see what you're doing, and I think you're a good coach, and I think you're doing good, but I'm still not going to be scared of you until I know you got your quarterback right. Yeah, I mean, so we'll see. I mean –
and it's always the conversation, man, and I hate it. And I don't want to take this conversation off too far, but this is just like a – like an overall football thing, like on a macro level. It's just like, look at how many teams have good rosters, but if they suck at quarterback, the whole team sucks, i.e. the Bears. They had a roster that could probably have contended in Super Bowl. Let's say they had Jameis Winston in that playoff game against the Saints. I mean, they would have had a better shot to win the game. I mean, granted, Trubisky did play okay that game. But, I mean, just my point is, look at how many teams are go to average teams just because they don't have a quarterback. Just because they're putting so much pressure on the other, positions on the field to play better. That's why, going to the draft, if you're picking in the top 10, and you're not picking a quarterback or like a left tackle or something like that, you should always trade back. Like, trade back. Trading back in the draft is the move and the way to go because you get more shots to get good players. But if you're not drafting a quarterback, I mean, you should always move back. But those quarterbacks, man, listen, you don't want to be in that position where you have a bridge quarterback and you waiting for the next 2 to 3 years to see if you're going to be that guy, man. Because look at Drew Lock. Drew Lock's coming up on his 3rd year. They drafted him, 2 years ago. And so now, They got these quarterbacks. They mean something, man. It's the most important position in sports, honestly.
Oh, I agree 100%. And it's funny. Somebody tweeted out something about this year's quarterbacks, and hey, I'm not trying to disappoint anybody, but at least one of these guys who you're saying this, that, or the other, how they're going to be good. History shows us that at least one of these guys is not going to be good. And I kind of chimed in with, oh, well, it's going to be more like 2 or 3. It's not just going to be one. And I think, and that's the position that's, it's so hard to get. And like you said, this maybe is a little more micro than we want to get into. Yeah. And it kind of trails off into my analytics thing a little bit. But yeah, like going to a place really matters, and I think people don't realize that. And sure, it matters to every player, but it certainly matters to quarterback. I mean, right. I'm not, I know a guy like Josh Rosen obviously had maybe more flaws than the teams realized. That being said, if he goes to Buffalo or to Kansas City instead of Arizona and then Miami, probably the two worst individual teams by that year ever. Same thing with Sam Darnold. Now, I'm not saying the Bills necessarily would have taken Sam Darnold, but just flip-flop Darnold and Allen. And if these guys got the same support that Allen got, that Baker Mayfield eventually got, that Mahomes got, where would they be? We don't know for sure, but that's so important. And I feel like there's so many of these teams and franchises. That's why people were talking about how the Bears should trade for Darnold. Like, no. Like, no. For Sam's sake, please. Like,
but listen, though, to that point, that's where I was going next as soon as you were done. But think about, what has Sam Darnold actually had to work with since he's been, with the Jets. I mean, everyone says that Adam Gates is such a sorry, sucky coach. All right. So how can you expect a rookie quarterback to succeed with a sorry coach? How can you expect a rookie quarterback to succeed with an underperforming offensive line? They just drafted a great offensive lineman in Mekhi Becton last year, excuse me.
Yeah.
So, I mean, now he finally got, solid tackle play. So my point is why not trade for Sam Darnold? Because the Bears, honestly, they don't have a bad roster. Their offensive line is solid. They have a decent running game. I mean, they probably can't sign Allen Robinson back because they don't have the cap space to do so, and he's probably not going to take a franchise because he can get way more in the open market. But let's just say they do in this hypothetical situation. I mean, and then we already know what the defense is going to do. I mean, they have a good shot. And so putting Sam in a situation where he has a great play caller in Matt Nagy, I honestly feel like Matt Nagy's been under the gun because they should have cut Mitchell Trubisky a long time ago, and they was trying to hold on to him. And then my thing is, Coach Nagy didn't even draft Mitchell Trubisky, so why are you holding on to him so hard? I don't care where you took him. You know what I mean? They should have signed Jameis. Yeah, like he didn't draft him, so why are you holding on to him so hard? Cut him. And they held on to Mitchell Trubisky way too long, and now they're in the position that they are now. They're in quarterback hell because they don't know whether to keep Trubisky or to go sign a guy or to go draft a guy, and that's the worst position to be in. So trading for Sam Darnold would probably be a great move for them at this point.
Yeah, my thinking on that in terms of it not being a great move for Sam, it seems to me, and I don't know the Chicago situation obviously as well as I know the Buffalo situation, but if it's a situation where the owner is kind of like, well, maybe I should have fired you, but I kept you for one more year and you're going to trade for Sam. Like, if you're trading for Sam Darnold to try and save your job and you might get fired anyway, that doesn't necessarily doesn't help Sam Darnold because then he goes there, he's got to learn, your system, but then you're fired. And then it's like, then he's got to come in and then the next coaches do they want Sam Darnold? And then you get in this like cyclical circular thing where, okay, well, we don't want him. Well, we want him, but then we got fired. Well, we don't. And it's just like, my God. And it goes back to the point of take your guy, build around him, give him a shot. And that's just kind of my overarching belief and, and maybe he would succeed in Chicago. I'm not saying he won't succeed. I'm just saying if they go 8-8 again and the owner is going to fire the coach and the GM, well, you haven't really done anything for Sam Darnold. I mean, maybe you don't care because, that's just my point is from his point of view, it's like, well, thanks,
Right. I think if they traded for Darnold, though, that would buy Ryan Pace and Coach Nagy more time, honestly. They would actually have, because they don't have the draft capital to move up and take a quarterback. They don't have the cap space currently at this moment in time. Kyle Fuller is a cut candidate, and Akeem Hicks is a cut candidate also. So then they will have more cap space. But they don't have the cap space to go trade for a guy like Deshaun. Like, they don't have the assets to do that.
Right.
So, I mean, trading for Darnold may be a more likely situation because he can play on that fifth-year option. And if you ain't messing with him, then you can just let him go, and then you can be in a market for a quarterback next year. But that would give you time to build the roster up. So, I mean, bringing this all back to the Bills and Josh Allen and the great quarterback situation that's finally in Buffalo, they did it. They did it the way that it's supposed to be done. Josh, they drafted the guy, right? And after they drafted the guy, they got Dable, got the system. Once they got the system, they already had Deion Dawkins, left tackle, right? Signed him, got him locked up. Hopefully, prayerfully, Brandon Beane makes the correct decision and re-signs Darrell Williams, who was an above-average pass blocker this year. So you got that. And then they put, weapons around Josh, and they built the team and the offense the correct way. They gave him opportunity. They gave him, weapons to work with. And that is a sign of why your front office is so important, why it's important to have a top-notch GM, why it's important to have a great coach, why it's important to have, coordinators. I would bet money that Brian Dable and Leslie Frazier are probably going to be gone after this coming offseason. So, just be on notice, Bills Mafia, that, take notice of your front office moves, because there's a lot of people in the Bills front office that were up for other jobs. So, and that stuff matters, so be leery and be cognizant of, the front office moves and how important they will be going forward as the Bills, try to win a Super Bowl now. Like, Bills Mafia haven't talked about winning a Super Bowl in almost 20 years. I'm 30, so, probably almost 30 years talking about winning a Super Bowl. So, I mean, relish in this time. Cherish it.
Definitely. They have certainly done it right. And I think that they've done so well that even if they had missed on the quarterback, I don't think they would have been fired. I really don't. I think they've done such a good job in every other area. And once again, I don't mean to move this, but I think like coaches get fired too quickly a lot of the time, and GMs get fired too quickly a lot of the time. And that's part of the problem in the league. But to your point, almost every guy who's in the Bills front office who is above the scout level has been mentioned as a future general manager in the league. There's like 6 guys. And Brian Gain already has been one. Joe Shane and Terrence Gray and Dan Morgan and Lake Dawson, like those guys too. They didn't lose any of those guys either. Now they probably will. To your point, they probably will lose some of those guys next year too, but it's so good to have another year of them, to have that many qualified people, taking care of the pro personnel and the scouting and a lot of help for Brandon Beane. That's so great. And it shows you, and they might be the only coach and GM combination that in their previous jobs roomed together in training camp. I mean, I don't think that happens very often. And I think that's why it's so unique. The whole origin story of them rooming together in Carolina during training camp and talking about what kind of team they'd want to build if they became a head coach, general manager combination, and how would we do this, and drawing it all up on the whiteboard. I mean, that stuff, it really does matter. The relationship between the coach and the general manager and the owner. The owner cannot sow chaos like Jeffrey Lurie or Cal McNair or Chris Johnson or whoever. you can't have this guy reporting to you and then that guy. Like, obviously McDermott and Bean both report to Terry Pagula, but they don't do it in an adversarial way. I guess, like, of course they both report to him. Like, you just need, I don't, like, these owners want to have these, like, adversarial relationships between each other. And yes, the Bills seemingly don't have any of that. They have shown you a blueprint along with the Ravens on how to build a team and how to build a team around a young quarterback. And everyone in the league should be studying that. And if you're listening and you're not a Bills fan, thank you for listening. But if your team's not doing that, you have to ask yourself why. And maybe, I'm not trying to dash your hopes or anything, but that might be a red flag.
Yeah, like I said last week, man, as we talked about Brandon Beane's interview, I would like for fan bases to use their power. And what I mean by that is these guys, they clearly watch social media. Now, I know they were watching Stephon Diggs, and obviously none of us are Stephon Diggs, obviously. But they watch and they look at social media. And I always say, I was like, man, put pressure on these GMs and these coaches and whatever to play better and do better. You know what I mean? If you suck, you suck. It's just how I go. You know what I mean? I don't make excuses for professionals anymore. You know what I mean? And back to your point about the harmony between the player, the coach, GM, and the owner, an owner can destroy a team so quickly. You know what I mean? Like when an owner wants to, have say in the football personnel, it's just like the Pagulas have done a great job of like letting the football people, take care of the football stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Y'all go out, y'all go to the appearances, y'all go to the fundraisers, y'all do all that stuff, man. But let the football people handle the football. And when that starts to spill over and you got owners who just literally got deep pockets and don't know anything about the football aspect or how to build a team, try to come in there and try to tell you what to do, like Khan from the Jaguars, I am very interested to see how that, situation turns out, because I don't feel like Urban Meyer going to go for any of that. You know what I mean? The owner coming in and having a say. So I would be interested to know what they worked out. But, that GM, coach, and owner synergy is just so vital.
Yeah, and I've really liked following this year and last year, these teams that are rebuilding. With the analytics thing, that's like such a cool thing for me to follow. And I've listened to some Jacksonville stuff, and man, they're all in on Urban Meyer. I mean, like, I'm not sure I understand it, but yeah, and you got Khan who's like, well, I'm in control of the 53, and okay. I mean, it's cool that he has been so patient. He gives his people a lot of time, and he won't fire them, but it's almost like too much time at this point. And it always fascinates me to see how these different teams, how are the Lions going to do with Matt Campbell, like biting people's kneecaps off or whatever? Like, what's that about? Like all this different stuff. So it always interests me to see these relationships now, because I know what a really good one looks like, and to sort of see it, Atlanta and Detroit and just see how this goes, and see like Denver, like Elway kind of removed himself. And so see what happens with that. And it's really interesting. And it's interesting to see. I feel like you can almost see like which teams aren't going to be successful just based on that relationship.
Right. The Bears and the Saints are not going to be successful this year, unfortunately.
Yeah, the Bears.
Do you know the Saints cap number right now? What it is?
Well, I saw the tweet earlier from the guy who owns Spot Rack, and it was like they've done this, and this, and they're still like $61 million over the cap. Or
it's negative 65 mil right now.
Yeah. Oh, I heard a report the other day that maybe like Drew Brees isn't ritaring now. Like what?
Yeah, they saw him working out.
About?
Listen, man, he need to hang it up, man. When they have to bring in a backup quarterback to throw a deep pass because they know you can't get it out there, like, yo, you got to be done. And see, that's the thing with these teams. Oh, and then the Pittsburgh Steelers, just to make a correlation between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Saints. when you hold on to a Hall of Fame quarterback so long, it starts to eat at your team. So going back to our beginning thing about J.J. Watt, if I was J.J. Watt, I would not want to play in Pittsburgh because they just won't let Ben go. They want to do it the right way instead of just letting him go. They've been sucked. They sucked for what? The past – this year was a good year, but they were beating bad teams. So it's just like you saw what they really were at down the stretch of the season. But, like, for the past couple of years, they've sucked. And Ben has not been good. They say that he does not work out in the offseason. He drinks beer all offseason and then comes in and like, oh, hey, I'm here. You know what I mean? Like, you got to put time into your craft.
And he doesn't want to, like, run RPOs and play action. Like, why do you want that guy on your team? I don't understand.
Why would J.J. Watt want to go there and play? And to go back to Drew Brees, it's just like you want to play so bad that you're harming the team. And the team won't have the balls enough to say, no, enough is enough. We're going with another guy. You're done. You know what I mean? Because of what he's done for the city. But you have to probably – and I know this stuff is easier said than done because he's done so much for the city of New Orleans and he's done so much for the Saints, period. You know what I mean? So it's you can't just let him walk out the door disrespectfully. But I always tell – and I said it's the Bills Mafia, and I'm saying it to every fan base. Every fan base rather win than see an old quarterback stick around. I promise you that. Y'all rather see y'all team win on Sundays, Mondays, and Thursdays than have your old quarterback that's been there for so long stink it up every Sunday. So, So what are we talking about then?
I don't know.
Exactly. See, like
I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to say.
Did we talk about Zach Ertz last week? I think we did.
Oh, I don't know.
PFF put out something, I think it was last week, about if the Bills traded a 5th-round pick to the Eagles for Zach Ertz, that would be a great trade. And I would agree with that. That if they did trade a 5th-round pick for Ertz, that would be pretty good. But personally, I would like to – I'm all about youth and cheap talent now. Like, I've been converted. Yeah. I'm all about youth and cheap talent. And if you can get Brevin Jordan or Tommy Trimble or Hunter Long in the draft, let's do that instead of putting it in for a veteran that's just come off an ankle injury. I love Zach Ertz, though. You know what I mean? If it was like the Bills were a tight end away from winning a championship, then I was like, all right, I'll say do it. But they're not, though. Even though Bean said they need more production, they probably can get more production via free agency or via the draft, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, Ertz is another guy who I feel like has been in the league forever, even though I'm sure he's really like 28. But I think it's just that sort of thing where, I mean, that's it, right? You want to save money, you want to get younger, but you still want to maintain or increase the production. I think that's what every team is looking for, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, look, like we talked about, look at Van Noy. You know, he signed a $40 million contract, and a $30 million guarantee. Now he's cut for Van Ginkel, a 5th-round pick. Like, come on, man.
All right. Well, I think that does it for us for today. So, EJ, where can the lovely members of the Bills Mafia find you on the social media?
I am always ready for your hot takes at eDaniels77 on Twitter. That is where I'm most active. That is where I talk the most. That is where I engage the most. So if you DM me, you tweet at me at eDaniels77, we can definitely have great football banter.
And we are part of the Brawl Network. This is the Bills Brawl that you are listening to. We have shows that drop on Tuesday with our other host, Mike Lindsley. I have a Friday show. This is the Thursday show called The Process. We thank you for listening. You can find me on Twitter at Charlie_Gross_. You can find this podcast at Bills Brawl. We also encourage you to check out the Brawl Network. We would like to thank you for listening, and if you would be so kind to leave a rating or a review or a comment or tell a friend about the podcast, it really does help us out. It helps other Bills fans find this great podcast. All this material helps them find the Brawl Network. And with that being said, Bills Mafia, find a way to embrace your growth mindset. And as always, trust the process.
Jerry Hughes will get the sack soon as you snap it. Andre Roberts running back, ain't no just backing. Mafia, we on a ride and we got traction. We got Beasley, we got Diggs. McKenzie make you miss. Dawson Knox with the stiff arm, treat opponents just like his. Feliciano, Deion Dawkins block defenders like the fence. Hey, it's the Mafia.